Death Club.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the podcast. Danny here. Today I'm talking to you about Monkey Peak. So Monkey Peak is written by Koji Shinasaka and drawn by Akihiro Kumeta. And this was published in the Manga Goraku magazine. And the only other thing I've read from this was Hitman Part-Time Killer. Translated, there's 58 chapters, but I believe it is over 100. To my understanding, it ended back in 2019, 2020. But My Anime List hasn't updated to how many chapters there are. And it makes sense because if you go through that page for the manga, there's really nothing there. No background, no synopsis. Characters aren't even on there. One review from a person. And it's pretty low in the popularity in the rankings. But I would say I like this one. So I found this off of a manga Twitter account I follow that posts a lot of updates from Japan of manga volumes being released and just news from magazines in general. I think the final volume was being printed for Monkey Peak. It just drew me right away because of the volume covers. They are fantastic. They don't really translate well to what the manga looks like, but just the dark intensity that we're seeing in this jumbled forest with this horrific looking monkey carrying a machete in the first volume. I was like, oh, what is this? So the synopsis is a drug company fell into a scandal with some bad drugs, and there was a lot of shifting around with the employees and the CEOs. And so with the new CEO coming in, he thinks we need a fresh start. And what's a better way than having the company come together? And so they went on this hiking trip up to one of these famous mountains out here in Japan. There's about 48 of them. The plan was to just hang out for a night or two at this cabin and really connect with everybody. Sort of like back in high school and that kind of stuff. It was like, all right, guys, we're going to get into groups and we're going to get to know each other. And it's sort of to kind of break the tension that's been going on, because as they're climbing up to the mountain, there's a lot of complaints because obviously these people did not sign up for this kind of thing when they applied for a company involving pharmaceuticals. And there's a lot of tension in the air because it's like, well, it's not our fault. It's the sales fault. It's like, oh, it's not sales fault. It's you guys' fault. And, there's a lot of bickering going around because everyone is agitated, tired. It's hot. They don't want to be there. As they're climbing Mount Shirabi, we get a good idea of who essentially the main characters are. And in the beginning of this series actually is a flashback to our main character, Satome, who is this young guy who went climbing with, I believe in the chapter we find out is his father, who sacrificed himself during a climbing accident when they were scaling up there, and now it's years later. And he's trying his best to be responsible, essentially. He feels very guilty about it, and among other things later down the line as we go through the rest of this journey. What does that mean? He gets pushed around a lot. I mean, he's not the best when it comes to his work anyways. So that's, people already have this mindset about him. And again, yeah, we get a clear understanding of all these characters' personalities and exactly where the conflict is going to be coming in when we hit the fan, which is actually the first night of them camping out at this cabin on top of the mountain. As Satome wakes up because he hears a noise, he's like, what was that, a monkey? Goes out of his tent to look. And then sure enough, it's a giant monkey wearing this straw covering and is holding a machete. This huge giant creature that's taller than him, hair all over the place, these giant white eyes and fangs coming out of his mouth. Very intimidating design. And he just walks away. And it's like, what's going on? Everybody wakes up and freaks out that there's a dozen bodies just massacred right on the side of where everyone was camping. And now only 36 employees are remaining. They're freaking out, don't know what to do. The genre on My Anime List says horror on there. And I understand that aspect with the monkey coming in to terrorize these people, but it's not very horrifying. And the deaths aren't as gory as you would think. I mean, early on, sure, like these first deaths are pretty brutal, right? Very gaping slashes across everyone's face and bodies. But I wouldn't say it's a horror aspect because it just doesn't have that kind of element in here. This feels more like a survival series, kind of like Suicide Island and a bunch of other those. And That's what hooked me on because I'm a big fan of that genre. But I guess because it's them trying to survive, get off the mountain, but this monkey is hunting us, that is, a typical thing you would see in scary movies. So I guess I understand why that is set into the horror aspect. Now, if the art style for the manga was just as detailed and dark as the volume covers, I can understand that. Looking at the art, it is, what I've been saying every now and then. It looks like a modern approach to manga art. It has that digital feel to it. It doesn't look as smooth and shiny as other digital mangas. Like off the top of the bat, Monster Musume, that has a too clean of a look on it. And that's because, he mainly draws digital. Okayato, I think that's his name from Monster Musume. He started on Pixiv, and then eventually his series got so popular it became a manga. The art style is also reminiscent to me of stuff like DeadTube and things of the likes, in this sort of survival horror, quote unquote, subgenre of manga. And it's nothing special, but I think it's fine. The scope and scale of how the mountain is, the way the angle is positioned when it comes to showing the monkeys off, especially in the distance, that stuff is pretty good. And I think keeping the monkey heavy in the shadows definitely complements that as well. So going more into the manga, we're really breaking down our characters and seeing exactly what's going on. So as we push forward into this journey of them trying to escape the mountain because they have no way to communicate outside for help, and their best luck is to just go to the next cabin and find supplies. Because they only packed stuff for 2 days max. They didn't expect to be up there for maybe a week at most. And so that has everybody on edge. And then here's where we start to see alliances come in, right? A lot of groupings coming together and really showing the true nature of these characters, or just things that have been added to their personality as things are getting crazy and intense on this mountain. One of note is this ex-football player who works for the company, and I forget his name, but he is, big and tall. He has the best chance of fighting these monkeys. And so with that sort of intimidation he has on the rest of the other standard employees, he sort of became the leader on this expedition, and having that sense of power and control over people definitely distorts the mind. But he has it in a different light. He's used to taking charge because he was the quarterback during his college years. So he has the sense of leadership already in his mind, and with everything coming in under pressure, it sort of changes him. But is it for better or for worse? But is it better or for worse is the question at hand, as things start to get pretty crazy after night 3 when food is very scarce and they're starting to realize they're being hunted. They are not the apex predator on this mountain. No way of defending themselves. And I think that's why I like series like this, because we really get to pull a lot from the characters, because that's all it's about. Sure, there are certain scenes that could be pretty cool when they're well executed, but here it's definitely mainly about the characters themselves. When I read the synopsis and it said, they were mountain climbing, I was like, oh, I wonder if we're going to get a lot of information about that. Like, are these mountain climbers themselves, right? Because I'm a big fan of The Climber, as we mentioned on this podcast all those years ago. But no, that's not really the case. They're just inexperienced at climbing, and we don't really get a lot of that kind of info. But later on, there's a surprise that comes in when it involves characters that I thought was a nice addition. And the dynamic that the characters can play off of each other after a certain point is definitely fun, because there's no longer trust between everybody. Everybody wants to go off in their own directions, but they know they need each other for support to either get to the destination or to be a sacrifice to the monkey. And the biggest thing that comes out of this is deception. That is the big theme when it comes to a lot of these characters. They're deceiving people, or their perspective on characters are deceived based off of limited information about them. Like Satomi, for example, with his history, a lot of people don't know about it. And when one of the asshole characters hears it, he's like, oh, okay, so now he's expendable because he did this thing. He's not worthy to survive this journey. So the writing, I'd say, is pretty good when it comes to that stuff. When we get knee deep around chapters like 30 through 40, like in that zone of what's translated, that is really good stuff. Again, the art style is okay. I mean, even the landscape stuff is nothing to really look at and appreciate because it is pretty generic compared to other mangas that we talk about here. But one thing that did get me later down the line is when we hit rock bottom with a few characters and they just go low. And just the way that they're drawn and their facial expressions was a really great touch. I have to say, they feel different from the rest of the characters, and thematically I think that fits because they've lost their sanity to a point. And so that's going to change their characteristics. Thus, we have to change how their appearance looks so that way the characters can just feel it just by looking at them. And I think that's great. Again, it's average, but there's little moments like that that make the art shine, and I think that's great. And the last thing for me to say here is I was definitely surprised at how many chapters there are. When the premise is they're mountain climbing and a monkey is coming to hunt them, I didn't think it would last as long as this. Like maybe if it was a compilation of short stories, to me that could kind of make more sense because this is the tale of this cursed mountain that travelers come to. And maybe there's a main character that could come back towards the end and it's like, oh, this was all linear. And the biggest thing to keep this manga as long as it is the pacing, right? Because we really have to slow down and get into the characters for this to be decent. Because if it's super rushed and a lot of things are flying left and right, you're not really going to sit there and appreciate it. So with it being slow, you could really absorb and really invest into these characters, especially when things start hitting the fan. And it can hit the fan pretty early. Can't wait for more chapters to be translated so I could check out how this is going to end because where it's at right now, no spoilers, but it is pretty interesting of where it's going. There's sort of this mystery, conspiracy, what have you, with our characters that they've kind of just imagined themselves because it only makes sense based off of what's been happening these past few nights. And so I really want to see how that's going to be resolved and exactly what this monkey is. So aside from all that, guys, that's all I really have to say today. Thank you for sticking around. Have you heard of this manga? Would love to hear your thoughts, and you can send those over to unversepodcast@gmail.com if you have any questions or comments, and we'll bring those up on the next episode. And you could follow us on social media anywhere you go at unversepodcast, and we'll let you know when those episodes drop. So thank you guys, and we will catch you on the next one.
Yo, that's something I gotta say. I'm really sick of being human when I should be primate. I'm irate, thinking I'll never get to hang out with my boys in rainforest. Concrete jungle got me feeling like a tourist, like a tortoise, cause I'm always stuck and hiding in my shell. These human boy pretenses got me lying to myself. It's like I live in hell, and I ain't doing well. It's like I slipped and tripped in and over 1,000 chewed banana pills. Ain't popping pills, no Molly, no Lucy, no Sannies. I just want them juicy bananas like candies to a child. Like damn, we feeling wild. It's Funky Monkey Friday, bitch, and damn, we're getting riled up and down. We make those monkey sounds, we turn it all around. That's what it's all about. We're gonna party the night. We'll turn the dark into light. I know humanity is left. It's time to monkey make it right. Let me hear you sing it. I'm not a monkey. I wanna be a monkey. It's not funny, cause damn, I got the munchies. 4 bananas and other monkey stuff. Feel not at home in my own body and it's monkey tough. I'm just tired of feeling like I'm never monkey enough.